Good morning. Good morning, traders. How are you all doing today? Karibuni sana. Glad to see a lot of these new people joining us today. So glad that you could join. Glad that you could all join us. So for those who are new, my name is Mitch Kanieri, and I'm a trader with Afriforex. I want to welcome you to another Afriforex daily analysis session. Now, you know, during these sessions, we as the Afriforex team we analyze the markets, we identify what trading opportunities we will be looking at taking for the day, and we do share that information with you. So as usual, not here alone. The Afriforex team is here in the back office. So feel free to ask any questions either in the chat box, and the team will be there to respond to you, or at least in the comment section below as well. So let's jump straight into it. So as usual, start off with sharing my screen. So hope that is visible. At least my screen is now visible. So today, let's start off with the fundamentals. Today, there's not necessarily much in terms of fundamentals, or at least, sorry, apologies. There's a lot that's coming out. Nothing much happened during the Asian session, but you can see from 11 o'clock during the London market open, we have some Swiss franc news and a lot of euro fundamentals, 12 o'clock and 1 p.m. and even 2:30, as well as 4:15. It seems like most of the day during the London session, it will be based on the euro. So we do end up expecting some volatility there. You can see the fundamentals that are coming out, very high impact news, the GDP, as well as unemployment rate. So these are big impact news. So we end up expecting some volatility on the euro, as well as during the US session. Similar situation. We have some GDP news, some jobless claims coming out. So we do end up expecting some good volatility on the markets today. So in terms of our watch list, you can see there is a slight difference between what we're looking at yesterday and looking at today. So yesterday, our bias was to look for selling opportunities on the US dollar as well as the Australian dollar, and we're looking to mix and match that with all the pairs on the buy side. But you can see today, the fundamentals have switched slightly, so we'll still be looking for selling opportunities on the Australian dollar. However, you have noticed the US dollar has moved to the buy side. We do have the euro and the Canadian dollar that has moved to the sell side. So our focus is going to be on these three pairs, the Australian dollar, the euro, and the Canadian dollar. We're going to be looking to sell those pairs, and we'll only sell them as long as we're matching them with the other pairs on the buy side. So that's the Swiss franc, the British pound, the yen, the New Zealand dollar, as well as the US dollar. So let's jump straight into it. So at first, we'll end up having a look at a review of the pairs that we didn't have yesterday that we're not going to be looking at today. Have a look at a screenshot or two, then we will jump on to today's pairs. So here we have the US dollar against the Swiss franc. Now, yesterday, our bias was to look for selling opportunities. You can see the three areas that we had pointed out. Now, early in the morning, when we were discussing this price, the price was within this particular bias area. Remember, we did mention one of two things. We needed a pullback to come in, potentially within this particular support and resistance area, get some sort of probe or price action signal before we're able to look for sells. But they also did mention to watch out for this particular support and resistance area. But it seems that the price did manage to continue going up to the upside, all the way back up to the main sellers area. Wanted to see some sort of probe or price action signal, which you can see. We have gotten multiple probes right here, where you can clearly see every time the market has attempted to go up, it's come straight back down. You can see all these probes right here, where the price does still seem to be maintaining below this area. So even though the price is still holding below, this is a pair that could potentially end up giving us issues today. Remember, the US dollar and the Swiss franc are both on the same side, and that's the reason why there's a pair of our watch list. Unfortunately, also the US dollar pairs not really move or take off yesterday. So next pair we did have was the British pound against the US dollar. Remember, on this kind of pair, our bias here was to look for buying opportunities. And you can see the three areas that I had pointed out. Now, earlier in the morning, the price did look as if it was attempting to go to the upside. It did point out these are the sellers who you need to watch out for. And you can clearly see as the price approached that particular area during the Frankfurt market open, we actually got the price coming down lower. So at that point in time, also did mention, so if I can just zoom out slightly, you can see the overall story, we were in an upwards move. Then there were some buyers here, but did also point out there were some big buyers right here within this blue support and resistance area. And you can see that's exactly where the price managed to come back down to within this particular area. So you can see at the timing around 4 and 5:30, the market ended up giving a very nice probe where there was a potential buying opportunity at that time. But you can see the same sellers who are holding the market yesterday. It seems that the price is even getting issues within that particular area. And you can see when pairs are both on the same side, there's no real movement to one clear direction. You can clearly see the sells come, then the buys come. It's quite choppy. That's the reason why today the British pound against the US dollar is off our watch list. Now, the next pair we did have was the US dollar against the Japanese yen. Now, this kind of pair, our bias was to look for selling opportunities, and you can see the three areas that we had pointed out: the aggressive sellers area, well, it is this sellers area all the way at the top, but you can clearly see the price did not manage to actually get within that area. We did see during the Asian session, the price did come down quite aggressive, but we're within an area where the bias. So remember, we did mention we needed one of two things: either pullback to come in within the support and resistance area before we're able to look for a sell, or the price reaching and holding below. Now, you can clearly see the price did not really do much during the London and the US session, where it was just holding within these areas. It seems like the US big boys, as you've seen on the other US dollar pairs, they did not really end up taking off yesterday, but you can see today, the price did manage to actually continue going down, breaking this area to the downside. But this mainly has nothing to do with the US dollar. This is mainly something to do with the Japanese yen showing a lot of strength. And if you do have a look at the other yen pairs, you will see something similar happening today during the Asian session. But unfortunately, even though the game plan right here could potentially still work, it could still also give issues, because you can see we have really broken this area to the downside, or at least attempted to break this area to the downside. But remember, on this big time frame, or at least on the US dollar against Japanese yen, you can see how big of a range we're in. Even though the market came all the way down, it came back in and was holding. So this not confirmed that this bridge, or at least this level, has actually been broken, or the range has been broken. And you could easily find similar situation to what happened. Was it the day before yesterday, where the price looked as if it broke the downside, but it did not hold below, and it ended up just being a probe. So it might be the same thing today, but unfortunately for us, the US dollar against the yen is a pair that's going to be off our watch list for today. Now, the next pair we did have was the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar. Now, in this kind of pair, our bias here was to look for buying opportunities. You can see the three areas, or at least the three areas that we had pointed out. Now, the price was still on its pullback phase. Wanted to see how the market would react. And remember, I did point out we're within an area where the sellers, so we needed the price to actually either go to the upside or wait for a pullback, see how the buyers were going to end up reacting. But you can clearly see the price managed to continue going all the way down. It looked as if it had actually broken this area to the downside. And as soon as the price was holding below that area, this pair did fall off our watches. Now, even though we can clearly see during the US session around 4:30, the market did manage to continue grinding all the way to the upside, approaching almost till this particular seller's area where we did end up getting issues. But you can clearly see, even looking for those buys will definitely give you issues. The US dollar is not showing that strength, or at least the weakness that we wanted to see yesterday. And unfortunately, this is a pair that off our watch list. Now, next pair we did have was the euro against the Australian dollar. Now, this is a pair that we did have yesterday that we're not going to be focusing on today. Now, our bias yesterday was to look for buying opportunities, and you can clearly see the buys did work out today during the Asian session. But this, as you can clearly see the illustration, wanted to see what kind of pullback we got within this particular area. Price kept on probing within this area. You can see during the US session, the price attempted to go through the upside, could not necessarily get all the way there. You can clearly see we found some small sellers area right here. But you can clearly see later on during the Asian session, the price still managed to pull back within this area, and it did manage to take off. You can clearly see that in this situation, it just means that the Australian dollar is much weaker than the euro. But don't be surprised, since both of the pairs are on the same side, you could easily find this market actually just bouncing between these two areas, ranging. Remember, when the market ranges, it does end up probing a lot. So just because you're seeing the price all the way here, that does not mean that this level has been broken. You could easily see the market continue to range and not necessarily give us any clear direction. So unfortunately for us, this is a pair that's off our watch list for today. Now, the last pair we do have for review was the Australian dollar against Canadian dollar. Now, nothing really much happened, as you can clearly see. We were looking for selling opportunities. Wanted to see what kind of pullback we're able to get within that area, but you can clearly see the big boys have not really been interested in this pair. So apologies for that. Have not really been interested in this currency pair. As you can clearly see, we do seem to be bouncing off, right, between these two levels right here. So between these levels, hardly any activity, no big boy actually able to break this area to the downside. Now we are seeing some weakness coming in. Remember, we did point out the Australian dollar had fundamentals early in the morning, and we are starting to see that weakness. But there are plenty of other pairs that you can match with the Australian dollar that should end up giving you a much better probability of your trades working out. So hope that is clear for all the pairs that we did have yesterday, but we're not going to be looking at today. So we'll end up having a look at one or two screenshots. In fact, there was just, I think, just one screenshot that we did manage to get. And this was from George Chege. So George did manage to end up grabbing a very nice selling opportunity on the euro against the Japanese yen. I guess you did end up taking advantage of that yen strength. And you can clearly see even today during the Asian session, the price really has come down in your favor. So very, very well done. You got the sell within a seller's area. Price has come down. You got a pullback. Your stop loss is within a very good area. So very, very well done on this trade, George. Check it. Keep up the good work, and you definitely must be making some good money on this trade. So very well done. And remember, guys, if you do manage to take any setups based on things that we do share here in these sessions, feel free to send them in to us. If things are not clear, also let us know. Remember, we're doing this for you guys. We're not necessarily just doing this for ourselves. We can do this and keep this information for ourselves alone, but we realize that it can end up giving you guys value. So remember, if you have any questions, queries, feel free to reach out to us. Our contact details are in the chat box, or you can be able to find our number right there in the description. So let's start with today's pairs. So we'll start off with the Australian dollar, mix and match them with the pairs on the buy side, then move on to the euro, then we'll do the next thing with the Canadian dollar. So we'll start off with the Australian dollar pairs. So we'll start off with the Australian dollar against the Swiss franc. Now, yesterday on this pair, our bias here was to look for selling opportunities. It is still the same situation today. And in fact, we're pretty much respecting the exact same areas that we did have yesterday. Now, if we're looking at the story of what happened yesterday, we can clearly see we were more on a pullback phase. Now, initially in the morning, the price was within the seller's area. Wanted to see signs of big boy sellers reacting. Sellers did end up attempting to come down, but the fact that they were holding within this buyer's area, the buyers did not really give up. And you can see the price did manage to continue going up. Remember, I did point out that all those people looking for sells, most of them would have their stop losses above here. Remember, I did point out that there was this level here, and you can clearly see how many times the price did manage to spike within those areas, inciting very many people to start looking for buys. All those sellers did end up getting stopped out. And we can see during the Asian session, the price is starting to come in quite aggressive. But it's a similar situation. Be aware, don't just focus on the red candles here. Take a note and look at the fact that you're so close within a buyer's area. So this is not the best place to look for your selling opportunities. Because remember, if you're looking for your sell there, most likely you'll have to try and hide your stop loss all the way at the top, and that is not necessarily worth it. So in this situation, for us, we need to see, since the price has just managed to come to the area, at least to the downside within this area, hopefully we can end up getting a pullback coming back within that location. And if we do see the price approaching there, we do end up getting some sort of pull or price action signal, or it lines up within one of the market opening times, then we should be able to find a very nice selling opportunity on the Australian dollar against the Swiss franc. So this one will be very interesting to see what ends up happening on that pullback. So let's move on to the next Australian dollar pair, which is the British pound against the Australian dollar. Now, in this kind of pair, yesterday our bias was to look for buying opportunities. Now, the areas we did have was slightly wider. You can see based on the highlighted areas that we did have right there. So those were the levels of where we were looking at. However, the market did not necessarily do much yesterday. You can clearly see we hardly got much of a pullback. The price was just ranging literally the whole day, except for during the Asian session. But after that, as you can clearly see today, during the Asian session again, because remember, we are dealing with the Australian dollar, we can clearly see this price does seem to be breaching this area to the upside. However, it has not yet been fully confirmed that that's a breach. Remember, we've seen many times that the markets could easily probe certain areas. So for us, we wait to see what kind of pullback comes in within this particular location. So we'll still be focusing on these areas. So if we can see the price coming back in and it actually ends up holding to the upside, and you see the price holding above, then we should be able to find a very nice buying opportunity on the British pound against the Australian dollar. But for right now, do not chase the market. Wait to see what kind of pullback comes in for us to look for those buying opportunities here. So game plan is clear, at least on the British pound against the Australian dollar. It does seem to be on the move. It seems most of the Australian dollar pairs are actually on the move. So right here, we have the Australian dollar against the Japanese yen. Similar situation yesterday, we did have this currency pair for a selling opportunity, but the price was within an area where the buyers, when we were discussing this market. Now, initially, it did seem we were within some sort of small range. So we can clearly see based on the illustration, we needed either a pullback to the top of the range or a breach to the downside. And you can see the price actually managed to breach this area to the downside during the London session. It did end up attempting to try and come down lower, but during the US session, we did end up getting that pullback coming in. And it seems, since we are dealing with the Australian dollar and the Japanese yen, a pair that's very active during the Asian session, it's no surprise that the price managed to still follow the same structure that we had pointed out, but it did seem to take a bit longer before the price pulled back towards that area, and the price has started coming down. So right now, our bias here is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. We can clearly see we'll be focusing on these three areas, but it seems that the sellers do seem to be attempting to break this area to the downside. Should be no surprise if that actually ends up happening. But this is not necessarily such a convincing breach. Yes, you could potentially end up looking for a sell, especially if the price holds below this area. But remember, for us, the main thing we're always trying to look for is some sort of pullback. If the price comes back in and holds above, then we'll be looking for a selling opportunity within this area, because you can clearly see we have not yet tested that area. So not be surprised if the price approaches there before we're able to look for a selling opportunity. But since the Australian dollar and the Japanese yen, so meaning the Australian dollar is showing a lot of weakness and the yen is showing a lot of strength, sometimes you might find that we might not necessarily get that much of a pullback. However, it just depends on what kind of trader you are. If those are, at least those conservatives trades are okay with you, you can. But if you want to end up following a specific structure, waiting for certain rules. So for us, the main rule we always have is a pullback. If we don't see a pullback, we'll always look for another opportunity to come in. So moving on, and I hope that's clear on the Australian dollar against the Japanese yen. So moving on to the next pair, which is the Australian dollar against the New Zealand dollar. I remember yesterday our bias here was to look for selling opportunities. Did have these three areas that will pretty much exactly have the same areas today as well. But we'll be focusing on how the market ended up reacting within this location. So we can clearly see we did end up getting the pullback. We get the price holding within this area. During the US session at around 4 o'clock, price was back within that area. And you can see the US big boys did manage to bring the price down all the way back down within here, where that was when the Asian session did end up opening. So overall, we are still looking for selling opportunities. We could potentially be in some sort of range, but at the same time, I think for those of you who have been here before, we've explained this concept where we've seen the sellers coming down quite aggressive to the downside. We did end up getting a pullback, meaning these sellers right here did end up, at least they should have actually ended up getting a price to actually make a new low. But the fact that they could not make a new low, you have to start questioning whether or not this price right here was actually good enough. So what you find most of the time is when it's not able to go and make a new low, you will possibly end up finding the market maybe spiking to the upside, inciting more people to look for buys. It might even end up getting all the way to this particular main seller's area. Similar situation to the other Australian dollar pair we had that look at. And if we do end up seeing that, or let's say we see the price coming back in, there could be a very nice selling opportunity. But also watch out when the price is within this area, or at least if it is within this seller's location. But overall, we'll definitely still be looking for a selling opportunity, but just be aware if the price does end up going for a better price. So moving on to the next Australian dollar pair, I think this is even the last Australian dollar pair we do have. These are brand new entries on our watch list. Here we have the Australian dollar and the US dollar. So overall, yesterday, our bias on this pair, we did not really have one because both the Australian dollar and the US dollar were on the same side. But today, the bias here is going to be looking for selling opportunities. We can see these three areas that we have identified. But if you realize right now, we're so close to the bias area, so nothing much for us to do just yet. So we need one or two things to happen. Could potentially be in some sort of range where we could find the price coming back in within this particular area, or we're able to look for selling opportunities. Or we could easily find the price managing to continue going to the downside. And if we're able to break this area, remember that level is only broken when we get the price coming back. And if we see it holding below, then we should be able to look for selling opportunities there. But remember, in terms of the pullback can come back all the way to the main SNR right there. But remember, we've also broken some sort of small support and resistance area. So if it does not necessarily get all the way to that location, just watch out for this area as well, as you could easily find some potential selling opportunities happening within that area. So hope that is clear on the Australian dollar pairs. As you can see, we've mixed and matched the Australian dollar with all the pairs on the buy side. So right now we're going to move on to the euro and do the same thing. So we'll start off with the euro against the Swiss franc. Now on this currency pair, the brand new entered our watch list. And on this pair, our bias here is to actually look for selling opportunities. So overall, we'll be focusing on these three areas. Look for sell, the aggressive sellers area right there at the top. You can see we're back within a small bias area and we are approaching the conservative area at the bottom. So overall, this market does even look as if it's in some potential range, bouncing just between these two levels, but not really made any higher highs or higher lows. And the fact that this range where the market came from was from the top, meaning the price entered the range as it came to the downside, meaning it has a higher probability to continue going to the downside. So we'll wait to see what ends up happening, but overall, we definitely know we're looking for sells. And if we are and we're within a range, definitely the best place to look for yourself is at the top of the range. Just because we're within this area and it looks like the sellers are coming down, remember we are still within a small bias area. Could end up easily finding the price continuing to go to the upside. But we are able to get the price breaching and holding to the downside, then I think we should be able to look for selling opportunities. This one not necessarily as high probability in comparison to getting ourselves right there at the top. But remember, with these pairs, if we do pair the price breaching and holding above the red support and resistance area, this pair will fall off our watch list. So moving on to the next pair that we do have running into our watch list. Here we have the euro against the British pound. And overall, we will be looking for selling opportunities on this pair. So we have identified these three areas of interest that we could potentially look for ourselves from. So as long as we're holding below the red support and resistance area, our bias here is to look for selling opportunities. You can see a similar situation as I pointed out on the other pair, where the market did end up coming at least into this range from the upside, where it ended up entering from there, and it had a higher probability of actually breaking this area to the downside. But if you realize, we're back within another range. So essentially ranging between these two levels as well. So the main thing we want to look for is a selling opportunity at the top of the range. If we do end up getting, let's see how the price approaches this particular area. We do see sellers reacting within this location, then we should be able to look for sells. However, if we do not see any reaction from sellers, remember, we will still be looking for sells right there at the top, especially if the price breaks and falls above this area. Our main sellers area will be within the red support and resistance location. So moving on to the next pair, here we have the euro against the Japanese yen. It's no surprise that this price has really come down. Remember, here we're dealing with the yen pairs. And the yen has a lot of correlation, it seems to be strong all across the board. So overall on this pair, our bias is going to be looking for selling opportunities. You can see the sells really did come down quite aggressive during the Asian session. But in order for us to sell, remember, for us, the main thing we want is a pullback. We're so close within the buyer's area, and the fact that these sellers have attempted to come down and they've not been able to make any new lows, it means this price right here is not good enough. We might need a better price to come in. So it could come in, give us some sort of probe or price action signal within this particular area, but also watch out for certain support and resistance areas. You can see there are certain locations where they can clearly see that the market could potentially react. So it's not necessarily only this support and resistance area. You can clearly see there's another location right there at the top. So don't be surprised if the price ends up pulling back all the way till there before we do end up seeing some sellers coming in. The main thing you want to see is after the pullback is if you see aggressive sellers and it lines up in one of the market opening times, then we should be able to, at least that should give you confirmation that the sell could still be on. So moving on, here we have the euro against the New Zealand dollar. So these are brand new entry in our watch list, and you can clearly see this price does seem to have been going up. Similar situation, we seem to be in some sort of range, bouncing between these two levels. So overall, as usual, the best place to look for your selling opportunity is at the top of the range. Now, the buyers are coming in quite aggressive, so which is okay. But remember, in order for us to look for ourselves, we need to see signs that the big boy sellers are actually interested in this price. So let the buyers come in. Let's wait to see whether or not the big boy sellers will be interested. So if we see the buyers attempting to come up, and then you see aggressive sellers coming back in and the price shows us evidence it's holding below, then you could definitely find a very nice selling opportunity. Because one thing, remember, most people right now are jumping in on their buys. No one is jumping in on their buys down here. But once this support and resistance area right here, this level here where the price has been holding has been broken, guaranteed most people are jumping in on buys. So remember, in order for us to sell, we need buyers. So this is a good thing. But the main thing we need to know is if the sellers are actually going to show some interest. If not, then you should not look for any trading opportunity on this pair just yet. So I hope that's clear on the euro against the New Zealand dollar. As we move on to the next and last euro pair we do have, which is the euro against the US dollar. Now, yesterday we did have this kind of pairs. You can see the highlighted areas that we did have and some illustrations that we did have there for looking for buying opportunities. Remember that both the euro and the US dollar were on the watch list, but they were on opposite sides. But today, since they have switched sides again, now today we will be looking for selling opportunities. Now, you can clearly see yesterday we wanted to see the buys. The price did not manage to end up going to the upside. We actually started getting a pullback, but once it did look as if it was breaking this area to the downside and holding below, then at that point in time, it did fall off our watch list. So even though you can clearly see how choppy it is, but today the biases have changed. And we will be looking for sells. So we'll focus on these three areas to look for our selling opportunities. So as usual, we want to sell within an area where sellers have reacted from before. So hopefully we can end up getting the price coming back within this area. But also just watch out, because in this situation, it's quite messy, but there does seem to be another small level right here. You can clearly see as the price has held within this area multiple times. As the price has reached the downside, it's no surprise that it's holding within here. But we do know the main sellers are right here. What you find a number of times is the price most people start jumping in on sells when they see the price doing this. Everyone's stop loss is right here. Most of the time, you'll end up seeing them getting stopped out before you actually see the price coming to the downside. So just be patient until you see your, at least your entry criteria, whatever you use for your entry criteria, as long as you see it within a nice area. Remember, the market opening times does add to your trading of probability. So let's hope see what ends up happening on the euro against the US dollar. Let's wait to see what happens here. So that is the last pair for the euro. So right now we're going to move on to the Canadian dollar pairs and do the same thing. So right now we'll start off with the Canadian dollar against the Swiss franc. Now, this is a brand new entry in our watch list, and overall our bias here is to look for selling opportunities. So you can clearly see this market had been on a big push to the downside, and right now this does seem to be a pullback that's coming in. So the main thing we want to figure out is when this pullback is actually going to get tired, or at least the buyers are going to get tired, and when the big boy sellers are actually going to show interest. So if you realize, even though we're focusing on these three areas, right now as the buyers and sellers have been reacting, to look at the way the pushes of the buyers and sellers, the buyers still seem to be the ones who are pushing to the upside, not really seeing any aggressive seller. Even the way the market is coming down here, even though we've probed this area so many times, as you can clearly see, and this is definitely a strong location, the best place to look for, at least best timing to look for yourself, is once you do end up seeing aggressive sellers before we're able to look for sell. But be aware, if this level doesn't hold, price can still come back all the way to the main seller's area. Remember, in order for, if anyone is jumping in on sells and everyone has their stop losses above here, chances are you'll find the market actually going to the upside, holding above, going to stop people out before you do end up seeing the price able to come to the downside. So just be careful about such situations. But overall, as long as you're buying with buyers and selling with sellers, the probability of your trade working out really does increase. So moving on to the next pair we do have, here we have the British pound against the Canadian dollar. You can clearly see the way this price has been going to the upside. And right now we do seem to be in some sort of range, bouncing between these levels. So overall, since we are at least ranging between these areas, I think most of you now know the script. Buy with buyers, at least at the bottom of the range. If you're selling, the best place to look for yourself is at the top. But since here we're looking for buys, looking for those counter sells might not necessarily be the best thing, because remember, if they're within a range, the best thing to note is where did the market come in from, or how did the price come into that range? If it came in from the bottom, chances are it's going to continue going to the upside. So you have a higher probability of that. Even though the sells could work, remember, probability is a big thing in trading. So in this situation, let's wait to see what ends up happening. Either the price will breach this area to the upside and hold above for us to look for buys, or we could end up easily getting the price coming back in within our main buyers area for us to look for potential buying opportunities within this location. We'll wait to see what ends up happening. But remember, as long as we're holding above the red SNR, we will still be looking for buys. We could easily even still find the price coming all the way down here. If it does do that, then remember, we'll still be looking for buys, but you just need to be patient on your trading. So moving on to the next Canadian dollar pair we do have, right here we have the Canadian dollar against the Japanese yen. It's no surprise that you can clearly see the way the yen has been showing strength, especially during the Asian session. So overall today, buyers here is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. So we'll focus on these three areas to look for potential sells. So right now, clearly we are within an area where the buyers, the sellers have just made a new low. Remember, what we need is a pullback, potential pullback to come back in for us to look for our selling opportunity, or we could easily get the price actually breaking this area to the downside. But even if it does, we need a strong breach and the price holding below for us to look for selling opportunities there. I think for the yens, pretty clear cut. I think the market is trending quite nicely. Let's wait to see whether or not we will get the market respecting this support and resistance area on that pullback before we're able to continue looking for those sells. So moving on to the next Canadian dollar pair we do have. So right here, we have the New Zealand dollar against Canadian dollar. Now, in this kind of pair, our bias here is to look for buying opportunities. You can clearly see the three areas that we had pointed out, or at least have identified. Right now, the market does seem to be in a range, bouncing between these levels. So overall, since we are looking for buys, we are within a very nice area where to look for our buying opportunities. The sellers have come down quite aggressive, but remember, the sign that we want to look for is sign that the big boy buyers will actually show interest. So if you do see the price attempting to come down and you see some sort of sign of aggressive buyers coming in, the price is able to hold above. And remember, it needs to line up within the market opening time. It's not just at any time will you end up actually seeing such a movement happening. You need to the market needs to have someone backing it behind. And that's the reason why you'll always look at fundamentals first, because there's a high probability that the big boys are going to be focusing on such news. So right now, let's wait to see what ends up happening. Remember, if the price breaks and holds below this area, this pair will fall off our watch list. But remember, it needs to actually hold. You can clearly see the price has attempted to come down within this area. The fact on the pullback, the price never held below. This is just a proof, especially if you do end up going to a higher time frame. Chances are you'll end up realizing it's either just a wick or something of the sort. So you can clearly see either there on the 4-hour. Yes, you can clearly even see within the support and resistance area, it's definitely still holding within such a location. So we'll wait to see what ends up happening on the New Zealand dollar against Canadian dollar. So hope that is clear. As we move on to the last Canadian dollar pair we do have right here, it is the US dollar against Canadian dollar. Now, yesterday on this pair, our bias was to look for selling opportunities, and you can see we did have 3 areas highlighted. Now, unfortunately, you can clearly see the price didn't manage to actually break this area to the upside. Once it did that, it did fall off our watch list. So you can clearly see the price continued holding to the upside, but today, apologies, I don't even know why these levels haven't changed. So I think that was a mistake on our side. I think these were the levels that we had put for that. So overall, since right now our bias has switched, we will be looking for buying opportunities. These will be the 3 areas that we'll be focusing on. You can clearly see the bias pushed from the upside within here. So as long as we're holding above this area, we should be looking for buying opportunities. You can clearly see we did end up getting a problem area right there at the top where the sellers did end up pushing quite aggressively to the downside. But it's a similar situation. As you can clearly see, this support and resistance area, the price has come to the downside, but it seems to be coming back in. So the main thing we want to see, if the price can end up giving us a pullback, and the price actually ends up holding to the upside, there could be a very nice buying opportunity here on the US dollar against Canadian dollar. But remember, if that doesn't end up happening, where you end up not necessarily getting a pullback, the price is able to continue going to the upside. And remember, if we are able to get the price holding above, then we should be able to continue looking for buying opportunities. Don't just start jumping on buys at the late when you see the price all the way at the top. Remember, even a certain situation like this, if most people had seen this move to the upside and started jumping in on their buys, most of them would have had their stop losses here. And you can clearly see the price still managed to come and get all those people. So don't chase the market, wait for the price to come to you or to a certain area for you to look for your trading opportunity then. So hope that's clear on all the kinds of pairs. As you can see, we've mixed and matched all the pairs on the sell side with the pairs on the buy side. So right now we're going to have a look at the indices, then move on to gold and silver. So we'll start off here with the NASDAQ, the NAS 100. So yesterday, our bias here was to look for buying opportunities. You can see the 3 areas that we had pointed out, but also pointed out that there was a problem area right here at the top. And you can clearly see as the price was within that location earlier in the morning, wanted to see whether or not it could get the price breaching to the upside or coming down. It seems like we did the latter. It ended up coming down, but this was during the US session. So at that point in time, seems like that was mainly when the pullback was coming in. Was quite choppy coming to the downside. It seems like it found some sort of small buyer's area right here. You can clearly see that's exactly where the market was reacting from. However, the price is still back within this particular area. So overall, we'll still be focusing on the exact same areas that we did have, since the markets are still respecting them. We are looking for buys as long as we're holding above this area. We didn't end up getting the price going to the upside. We did end up getting a pullback. The price is there. One thing that I'm happy to see is when you end up looking at the reaction of the sellers. So last time within this particular area, look at how the sellers ended up reacting, coming to the downside within this location. But right now, they do not necessarily seem as strong as they did before, meaning with chances that we have a higher probability of this price being broken to the upside. So we might end up finding something similar to what we were hoping to see yesterday. Could be something like that, or you could end up waiting for the price actually just to break this area to the upside and take it above. But do watch out for such, because remember, we are buying within the middle of the area, so there's easily, that one ends up adding a lot more risk. I think the best thing for us to wait for is hopefully we can get the price coming back in within this buyer's area. At that point in time, we can be able to look for buys. Even if targeting all the way at the top there, we do need to manage our trade within this first problem area, because you can clearly see it has given us a issue for the past 2 days. It's definitely a location that you do need to manage your trade. So hope that is clear, at least on the NASDAQ. As we move on to the Dow Jones, so the US 30. Now, was quite choppy yesterday. It seems that there was a lot of fundamentals. Remember yesterday when we were looking at the fundamentals, so quickly if we go look at them, remember I did point out that we did have a lot of news that was coming out. There was the interest rate news, there was the FOMC statements. There was a lot of fundamentals that ended up coming out yesterday, and you can clearly see the result of such a reaction, because that is early in the morning. You can see how many times it spiked going to the upside, confusing very many people. But one thing you'll realize is the level is still being respected. The price never once breached and held below, although it did end up spiking quite a bit, almost coming back to the main buyers area that we did have. So overall today, the levels will pretty much be the same, still looking for those buying opportunities. Can see right now the fact that the price has gone to the upside. Hopefully we can end up getting this price coming back in within this area for us to look for buying opportunities. Or remember, alternatively, we could easily get the price reaching this area to the upside, and see the price holding above, then we should be able to continue looking for buying opportunities on the Dow Jones. So I hope that is clear, at least on the game plan. Remember, if the price is able to come down lower, breaks and hold below the red SNR, at that point in time, our bias will switch and we will start looking for selling opportunities on this pair. So moving on to the next one, which is silver. Now on silver yesterday, we were looking for selling opportunities. You can see the three areas that we had pointed out, but remember we did point out that we're back within the main seller. So if we did get the price breaching and holding above this area, then at that point in time, we will actually switch our bias and start looking for buying opportunities. So you can see during the London session, nothing much happened. Similar situation, just once the US market did end up opening at around 4 o'clock, you can see the price started to break this area to the upside, and it looked as if the price was holding above. So at that point in time, there could have been a very nice buying opportunity right there, because at least at that point in time, the bias did end up switching, and you can see the price did manage to go to the upside. So today, the bias has switched, and remember, you can clearly see, even as the price managed to, at least even if you missed that trade, you can see the price still managed to come back within the same area to give a potential buying opportunity. So overall, we have switched our bias on silver. So we'll be looking for buying opportunities based on these three areas right here. So aggressive buyers area is all the way down here at the bottom. So as long as we're holding above this red support resistance area, our bias here is going to be looking for buys. So right now, the fact that we're within an area where the sellers, it's nothing much for us to do except wait for one or two things. Either the price breaches this area to the upside and we get the price holding above for us to look for buys, or we could end up getting the price giving us a pullback coming back in within this particular area for us to look for those buying opportunities then. But either way, right now, the fact that we're looking for buys and we're within a seller's area, there's nothing much for us to do. We need to end up actually waiting to see what ends up happening here. So hope that is clear on silver as we move on to the next pair, the last fan favorite, which is gold. Now on gold yesterday and today, our bias here is still to look for sales. Remember here, we're purely technical, meaning as long as we're holding below the red support and resistance area, our bias here is to look for sales. Now you can see during the London session, we didn't have getting a pullback coming in. Price approaches this particular support and resistance area that I did point out yesterday, and you can see the price did manage to continue coming down, at least grinding to the downside, coming back down towards the buyer's area that we had pointed out. We can see it even spiked, seem to have come back within some sort of small support and resistance area. At least for those who have done the one-on-one class and the AMP will know exactly why the price would have approached such an area, but can clearly see the price did manage to come back up. So overall, these levels are still being respected. But one thing to take note of, remember gold and silver, sometimes they are correlated, sometimes they're not. So we need to wonder whether or not silver is leading gold or is gold leading silver. So in the fact that silver has breached to the upside and we're not looking for buys, just be careful. Even if you do get the selling opportunity at the top, just watch out just in case the price does manage to continue going to the upside. But overall, we will still be looking for selling opportunities. Remember, as long as we're holding below the red support resistance area. Only if we get the price breaching and holding above, similar situation to what I illustrated yesterday, that's only when we will actually switch to a buyer's market. So I hope that is clear on all the currency pairs. As you can clearly see, we've mixed and matched all the pairs on the sell side with the pairs on the buy side, including the indices. Now, I can be able to address any questions. Seeing Ivy Wanyama, glad to see you here, Ivy. You're saying good morning, Mitch. Karibu sana, Ivy. Glad that you're here as well. Now, one thing, remember, guys, if you do want more education, we do have the AMP course coming up, starting this coming month or this next week. So remember, if you are interested, feel free. There should be a link in the chat box or at least in the description. But the link, you will find a sign-up sheet for the Amplified program. You can be able to fill out your name, and we should be able to reach out to you and figure out what it is that you need and how to service you guys better. So remember, there should be a link for that if you do want more education, at least knowing how to jump in on trades. Because remember, this AMP course or program is where you will sit down with me and John every day. So it seems that once this session ends around 10:30, so 30 minutes before the London market does end up opening, we end up coming, we analyze the charts, looking at the exact same pairs, and we'll review and see what we can end up doing. So trading together for about a month. So the first 2 weeks will be education. Then the next 2 weeks will be practical, where we'll be looking literally for opportunities each and every day. So around 2.5 hours each and every day. So that's between around 10 to around 12 or so. So if you are interested in that, if you want to sit like have your head behind us and look over our shoulders to see exactly what we're doing, how we're doing it, how we think about the market, if you are interested in that, something that interests you, feel free to sign up for that. I think that link should be in the chat box, but you can be able to reach out to us as well. So I guess that's it from me and from us. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me today. Remember, we do have a number of fundamentals today. So do watch out for that, especially for the euro, the Swiss franc. We do end up expecting a lot of volatility, as well as the US dollar as well. So we do end up expecting quite a bit of fundamentals. So just watch out for that. So I guess that's it from me and from us. I want to thank you guys so much. Hope you guys have an amazing, amazing trading day. Remember, feel free to reach out to us. We are here to give you guys value. So once again, thank you guys so much. Have an amazing trading day. God bless. Happy trading, and bye for now. Cheers, guys.